Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a world that's usually shrouded in secrecy, and let's be honest, a lot of misconceptions.
Oh yeah, definitely. We're talking about income tax raids in India,
Exactly. You know, the kind of stuff that makes for dramatic Bollywood scenes, but what's the reality? Well, we've got an insider's perspective to help us sort fact from fiction.
right?
Our source is a fascinating YouTube interview with Rahul Raghuwanshi. He's an actual income tax inspector in India.
And he's giving us a glimpse behind the curtain.
Definitely. So first things first, let's address the elephant in the room. When we think of tax raids, we often picture, well, chaos.
Yeah, you're thinking like those dramatic Hollywood scenes, right? Barging into homes, tossing furniture, a whole lot of aggression.
Exactly. But according to Rahul, it's not quite like that.
Not at all. The reality is much more strategic and systematic.
So less about brute force, more about brains, then.
You could say that. Rahul really emphasizes the role of data and software in modern tax investigations.
Really? So it's high-tech now?
Oh yeah, officials are using sophisticated tools to analyze financial transactions, property records, you name it.
Wow. So it's all about connecting the dots digitally.
Absolutely. They're looking for inconsistencies, suspicious patterns, anything that might signal tax evasion.
I see. So is this data-driven approach more effective than the old-school methods?
That's a great question, and it's not a simple answer. On the one hand, data analysis offers a level of precision and efficiency that you just couldn't achieve before. But on the other hand, it raises questions about privacy.
That's true. And speaking of things that raise questions, Rahul also brought up the role of informants.
Oh yeah, the informant network.
It's a bit of a wild card, isn't it? He mentioned disgruntled spouses.
Even accountants spilling secrets.
Wow. It really adds a human element to this whole process, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Makes you think about the motivations behind those actions. Why would someone turn informant? Loyalty. Revenge.
Or maybe, just maybe, a little financial incentive. Because Rahul mentioned that informants can actually get a small reward.
If certain conditions are met, that's right.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity to an already complex situation. And speaking of complexity, Rahul also highlighted some interesting regional differences.
Right, like how Mumbai is known for a more hard approach to raids.
Whereas Chandigarh has a reputation for being softer.
So fascinating. It suggests that law enforcement culture isn't uniform across India.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how those regional variations might affect the outcome of a raid. But regardless of location, imagine being the target of one of these investigations.
I can only imagine.
Innocent or guilty, that's got to be stressful.
Absolutely. Just the sheer power dynamic between the citizen and the authorities can create an intimidating atmosphere.
Right. And to make matters even more intense, Rahul walked us through the meticulous planning that goes into a raid.
Yeah, from covert surveillance to coordinated entry.
It sounds like something out of a spy movie.
There's definitely an element of suspense. He described this letter-opening moment just 15 minutes before the raid. That's when the teams finally discover their targets.
Oh, wow. Talk about pressure. But all this power, this sequency, it begs the question, are there safeguards in place to prevent abuse?
That's where the legal framework comes in. Rahul emphasized the importance of warrants, witnesses, documented procedures, all designed to protect citizens' rights.
To ensure fairness.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, though, how does the Indian system compare to other countries when it comes to transparency and accountability in these situations?
That's a question worth pondering. What level of oversight exists? What recourse do citizens have if they feel their rights have been violated?
Right, and then there's the issue of phone confiscation during raids. Rahul admitted it's a common practice, even though it's not explicitly allowed. The justification is to prevent communication.
And potential evidence tampering.
But is that ethical? Is it even legal? It's a debate that goes beyond income tax raids, doesn't it? It touches on broader questions about surveillance and privacy in the digital age.
Absolutely. It's a conversation we need to keep having as technology evolves and the lines between our physical and digital lives continue to blur.
We've been talking about this world of raids and informants and all these high-stakes investigations.
Right.
But what about the people behind those investigations? What's it actually like to be an income tax inspector in India?
Well, from what Rahul told us, it's not your average desk job.
Definitely not. He made it sound pretty demanding, actually.
Oh yeah, it takes a special kind of person to do this work. You need a sharp mind, a keen eye for detail.
And a deep understanding of the law, right?
Absolutely. Rahul talked about how interpreting the law is a key part of the job.
Yeah, it's not just about crunching numbers.
Not at all. It's about being able to connect the dots, see the bigger picture.
So like a financial detective.
Exactly. They have to be able to analyze complex transactions, spot those subtle clues that might point to tax evasion.
Sounds challenging, but let's be real here for a second. The salary isn't exactly what you'd call, well, lucrative, is it?
That's true. Rahul mentioned making around 80,000 rupees a month after taxes.
Which is a decent living, sure.
But it's not exactly a get-rich-quick scheme.
Especially when you consider the risks and the pressure that come with the job.
And no bonuses for successful raids either.
Really?
Yeah, just a nice meal and an extra day off, according to Rahul.
Huh. So what keeps these people motivated?
It seems like it's a sense of duty. Rahul definitely came across as someone who's passionate about upholding the law and ensuring a level playing field for everyone.
Yeah, he talked about that.
It's that intrinsic motivation that drives them.
Makes sense, but it's not a static field, is it? Tax laws are always changing, new evasion schemes popping up all the time.
Exactly. They need to be constantly learning, adapting, staying one step ahead.
Which brings us to another interesting point Rahul made about the need to, and I'm quoting him here, dominate an employee or manager to get information.
Yeah, I remember that part. It sounded pretty intense.
Definitely. So it's not just about having technical skills, it's also about having strong interpersonal skills.
Absolutely. You need to be assertive, persuasive, able to read people, know when to push and when to hold back.
It's a delicate balance, right?
Definitely. You're dealing with people who might be trying to hide something.
And you have to extract information without resorting to, well, illegal tactics.
Right. You need to understand human psychology, build rapport. It's a subtle art.
So not everyone is cut out for this kind of work.
Not at all. It takes a certain personality type.
Someone who can handle pressure
Think on their feet.
and navigate complex situations.
Exactly.
And what about career progression? Rahul kind of hinted that promotions aren't always straightforward.
Ah, yes, office politics.
Sounds like it. He mentioned seniority, performance reviews, even external pressures.
It's a reminder that this job exists within a larger system, a bureaucracy.
With its own rules and hierarchies.
Exactly. It's not a job for someone who's looking for a quick climb up the ladder.
More like a marathon than a sprint.
I'd say so. It requires patience, dedication, and a genuine passion for the work itself.
Yeah, because when you weigh the pros and cons, the stress, the risks, the relatively modest salary, it's pretty remarkable that people like Rahul find fulfillment in this career.
It speaks volumes about their commitment to public service.
Their sense of purpose.
Definitely. They see the bigger picture. They understand that their work contributes to a fairer, more just society.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it, that even in a system that can sometimes feel impersonal, like taxation, there are real people making a difference.
Absolutely. And we've only scratched the surface of this world.
We have. From the intricate planning of raids to the psychological tactics used during interrogations, it's clear that income tax raids are much more complex than we might have thought.
And the implications go far beyond individual cases.
Right, because as technology advances, as our world becomes increasingly interconnected, the challenges and the stakes only get higher.
So in our final segment, we'll step back and consider the bigger picture. What does the future hold for tax enforcement?
It's mind-blowing to think about how technology is shaping everything, even something like tax enforcement.
Yeah, it's definitely a game changer. And we're just at the beginning. Imagine how advanced these tools will be in 5, 10 years.
I know, it's like a constant race, right? Authorities are developing these sophisticated systems to catch tax evaders, but then the evaders are finding new ways to stay ahead.
Exactly. And as if that wasn't enough, globalization throws another wrench into the mix.
Right. Money's flying across borders all the time these days.
Makes it even harder to track.
So how can tax authorities even keep up?
Well, it requires international cooperation. Think data sharing agreements, harmonizing tax laws across different countries.
So they need to work together.
Basically, yeah. It's a global challenge that needs global solutions.
It makes you think, how effective can any one country be on its own?
That's the big question, isn't it?
And then you add in all the ethical considerations like we talked about with phone confiscation during raids.
Yeah, the balance between effective law enforcement and individual rights.
It's a tough one. Where do we draw the line?
It's a conversation that's happening everywhere, not just in India. I mean, think about surveillance technologies, data encryption, the access that governments and corporations have to our personal information.
It's a slippery slope for sure.
Absolutely. Because on one hand, you want authorities to have the tools they need to do their job, right?
Of course.
But we also don't want to live in a society where we're constantly being monitored.
No, definitely not.
So finding that balance, it's crucial. And it requires open dialogue, clear legal frameworks.
It's a societal challenge as much as a technological one, right?
Absolutely. We have to decide as a society, what are our values? What kind of world that we want to live in? What limits are we willing to place on power?
When we started this deep dive, I had no idea how complicated this whole world of tax enforcement really is.
Me neither.
But it's been fascinating to learn about all the different aspects, the planning, the investigations, the ethical dilemmas.
Yeah, it's definitely more than just numbers and spreadsheets.
And there's so much at stake for individuals, for governance, for society as a whole.
It all comes back to that idea of fairness, doesn't it?
Yeah, creating a system that's equitable, transparent, and respects everyone's rights.
That's the goal, isn't it?
It is, and it's an ongoing process, one that requires constant adaptation as technology evolves and our world changes.
It's a challenge for sure.
So I guess the question we're left with is this: how do we ensure that tax enforcement keeps pace with those changes while still upholding those fundamental values of fairness and transparency?
It's a big question, one that we all need to be thinking about.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive.
It really has.
I learned a lot.
Me too. It just goes to show you never know where these deep dives will take us.
That's for fair.